So where I want to start this interview is because the last time we spoke, it was October, and this was before election season. It was before election Tuesday. But I wanted to get your thoughts and your feelings during election night as you were watching the polls, not only at the national level, but between your own race too. And what were some of the thoughts and feelings going through your head?
Yeah, it seems like that the last time we met, Noah, in October seems like years ago, not months ago, man. So, yeah, lots happened since then. But, that night, what was odd is I know we had a little gathering with just some of the volunteers and, some family because things were still very, very, dangerous as they continue to be. But when I got there, I heard this because I got there a little late. I heard the scream, right? And everybody started clapping. So I thought, all right, Biden's up, right? So we started getting excited. But as I arrived, I realized that the first numbers had come out. The first cycle had come out in the local races, and we were up. Mm-hmm. And so, we weren't up significantly, but we were up. And yeah, it just caught me by surprise because I had been thinking a lot about the national race because I just wanted to get myself distracted from our own local race. And I figured we had done everything we could. So, when I arrived, they're like, no, man, these are your numbers and look. And so we just wanted to be competitive, in the first cycle, but for us to be up and, be strong, at least at that point, every cycle thereafter, we just kept getting stronger and stronger. And, I got to say, the results were obviously, very welcome, but I just didn't expect the gap, mm-hmm. between our election and our candidacy versus the other three strong candidates.
Mm-hmm. Now we saw it on the national level that there was a delay because of the mail-in voting and just some of the different obstacles that they had to go through voting through a year in pandemic. When was the announcement officially made that you had won the election?
You can tell in local elections, you can tell pretty much that night, unless it's super tight. Mm-hmm. But because we had, a significant gap by probably about 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, we had, we knew that it was going to be very difficult for anybody to overtake us. So we knew that night because there was just so many ballots that could be counted. And we had built up such a strong lead. And here's what happened. So here, for you and your listeners primarily, because I know you reach a broad audience, but I know a lot of young people, mm-hmm. listen to your podcast and follow you. So the day before the election on Monday, how we were doing mail-in ballots. So this was the first time mail-in ballots had really been, something that was encouraged across the board because you could always do your absentee ballots. I mean, for years back, mm-hmm. but this time because of the pandemic, it was really encouraged. People obviously were all sent ballots. 50% of the votes had already been cast by the day before. So we knew that whatever we were going to see the night of the election were those early votes. And of those early votes, those 50%, the majority of them were from 18 to 35. Wow. So to me, I felt like, all right, this is who I'm speaking to, right? And that's why I attribute a lot of the success that we had to messaging, to the support of like those, young voters that maybe it's their first time voting, right? Mm-hmm. And so I felt really good because I felt like I didn't want to let them down, right? Because I knew that the worst thing you want is for somebody to be discouraged first time they're voting. And they're like, oh man, my vote didn't even matter, Mm-hmm. So this time, not only did it matter, to get me in office, but they got a lot of very young, progressive council members in. So it was a good night all the way, all the way around.
Yeah, we talked about in our previous interview how this was your first time using social media to campaign, and it seemed like that paid benefit because, like you said, a lot of people that age group 18 through 35, they're all scrolling through different social media platforms, and that's where you got to reach them,
Yeah, it was amazing how we had done like a complete shift. And I know I had worked with some campaign managers, people who I had worked with, for years. And they were like, hey man, bad idea. You better do more mail, do the traditional stuff. And we took a risk this time because we thought we had seen the trends, in the last few elections where people just aren't paying attention to what they get in the mail anymore. It's just literally you get it and it takes you about maybe 10 seconds to throw it in the trash. Whereas on social media, you're getting your information on your device, on your phone, as you're just, scrolling. And so we were seeing good responses and things that we were putting up. I guess, those that know the space well, you can totally try to understand how many people actually view it, how many people open it, and how many people engage. So once you start seeing those metrics in that much detail and the data, you realize this is really effective, right? Mm-hmm. It talks to people who are going to be those new voters, those voters that are just sort of non-traditional.
Mm-hmm. Now, taking it back to a national level, obviously, I think it was either that Saturday or maybe the following Saturday when the announcement was officially announced that Biden had won the election. But what were some of your emotions kind of as you were sitting there waiting between Biden, Trump, and at the national level for the election?
Yeah, as happy as I was about the local elections and the results and how decisive we had won and how a lot of good progressive candidates had won in Santa Ana, thinking about, oh man, we're going to deal with the Trump administration and it's going to be difficult. They're going to continue suing us for being a sanctuary city. They're going to continue cutting our funding, making life really difficult for our people. It would have been still a really, tremendous victory, but it would have been one that was almost measured and offset by what would have happened nationally. So, I was just excited seeing things change and evolve over time. And then, seeing the state of Georgia, because I have a good friend out there, her name's Stacey Abrams, who really helped get, young people and people who had never voted inspired enough to vote. And for them to win, once I saw that was leaning towards Biden and the numbers were looking strong, I felt like, this is really a blessing, because not only can we complement what we're doing here locally, but if we have an administration that's even halfway as decent as the one that we had before, we'll go far. But I'm excited, man, because, he knows California and his vice president, Kamala Harris, she's from here, right? So she knows our state, she knows our needs, and the fact that the demographics here throughout the state are really diverse, and we have really, really difficult conditions here, and especially in Southern California. But and also getting Alex Padilla to backfill her seat when she got elected, and he's a good guy, he's a good dude. He's I'm not sure if but he's carrying a bill to accelerate and make undocumented workers permanent residents, those who were working as essential workers, right? So people who worked in manufacturing, picking, whatever it was that was essential during the pandemic. His bill is to accelerate their legalization, right? And so I'm supporting that bill. And just excited to have a dude like that in there who, understands what a lot of people go through here.
Yeah, that's wonderful to hear. It seems like it hits closer to home, especially here in Santa Ana with a big immigrant population.
Yeah, because I think he was on the LA City Council before he became, the Secretary of State, and he had served in state government. So he represented San Fernando Valley, which is, the demographics are very similar to Santa Ana. A lot of immigrants, a lot of Latinos, people of color. But, I think that, having a person like him there, having a person like Vice President Harris there, look, it gives me hope, because I figure those people, they know our challenges here. And it's good to be able to just, call them up, and their friends and their people that can help.
So fast forwarding to December 6th, you get sworn into office. How does your everyday life change now that you've been sworn into the mayor?
Yeah, man, it changed way before then. So, that was almost, more ceremonial, but, the transition had begun before then, and we were already understanding what was going to be facing us. And it's been all about this pandemic early on, So my days have gotten a lot longer, weekdays and weekends all blend into one another. And so it is a lot more than I expected. But the good thing is that because I'm familiar being on the council with government, at least I wasn't unfamiliar with the system and who you have to deal with and what you have to do, and, just finding your way around and understanding the process. So in that sense, I felt like the transition was not as difficult, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I'm trying to do, though, because we have very not only young council members, but new council members, right? So they're new to government in general. And to be right now, and I feel for them, because to be in a position of decision making in a time of a pandemic, in any crisis, right, accelerates like your learning curve. Because usually you come in, you get to learn things, in time and gradually ease into the role. But man, they've had to learn like on the fly. I mean, and making, some big decisions and being faced with like, basic needs that people have. Like, I don't have enough to pay my rent. How do I not get evicted? My family is sick. Somebody's passing away. Like serious problems, right? That for a young person, a newly elected person that's completely unfamiliar with government or dealing with government for the first time, that's been my sort of, that's what I've tried to do, is try to ease them in and say, look, if you can govern during this time, you'll be able to govern at any time, right? Because anybody can govern when things are good. Anybody can govern when nothing's going on and everything, there's plenty of funding, there's no, health crisis, economic crisis. But I said, this is your moment, this is a moment where you learn, and you'll never forget this, right? Because I know that when I was a new council member years ago, I had come in right before the economic recession, right?
Ooh,
of 2008. So I literally was, there maybe a year and a half, and we just get, steamrolled by this, global recession that hits us. And, we're looking at potentially filing a bankruptcy. Well, you have to grow up really fast, and, not in age, but in experience. Right. And I think, the council members who are like I said, the oldest serving one or the longest serving one has about 2 years of experience after me. So that is really new, right? To be able to have to deal with these things. So I've just been trying to ease them into it, and they're good, man. They're sharp, they're strong. And the great thing about it, Noah, is that the majority of us are either born or raised here in Santa Ana. That's a big deal.
Yeah, of course. I think I had the pleasure of interviewing Jesse Lopez for the show, as well as Jonathan Hernandez, and just meeting them, getting to conversate with them. And I've seen a lot of Ty, I forgot her last name, Ty Fam's work and everything on social media too. So like you said, going back to the voting, how a lot of 18 to 35-year-olds did the mail-in voting, they're also part of that demographic. And I feel like they're the voices of the, like you said, the future generations to come. And if they get to just continuously work up the ladder and hold positions, whether it's in local positions and so on and so forth, they have a lot of room to grow.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and like I said, I'm hoping that everybody felt inspired, right? Like, hey, my vote counted, right? I made change here, and in the city I live in the city I love, and that's what, to me, towards the end, like as the days were getting closer to the election, I was like, oh damn, I can't let these people down. I can't let our folks down, because I just you feel like the responsibility no longer to yourself but to others, and that's the way I always saw it, as like, this isn't my campaign. Look, I'm a vessel, and I hopefully carry some of the expectations and goals and dreams that other people have. And, at some point, I just realized I just don't want to let them down, So, yeah.
Okay. So like we said, back when we interviewed in October, things were such different. It was a different world or time that we were living in. And then obviously everything happened since then, especially around COVID and the pandemic. It's taking a very sharp spike in the wintertime, and then it's kind of seeing numbers go down. But one of your main issues was to get more testing and also get more vaccinations to the city of Santa Ana and people of this community, especially like the essential workers. What are some of those steps that you've been taking while you're in office to make sure those things happen?
Yeah, man, great question. So I do remember us talking about that, because I remember right around October when we spoke, the testing was going to end, right? It was, the money was running out. I think the testing ended early December. And I told you, I don't know what we're going to do, right? At that point, funds are gone and all these resources are gone. So one of the first things that we did when we started in January was to do an emergency funding of additional testing, right? And it's more to set that testing up so when vaccines came, we would transition into vaccinating and inoculating a lot of people in the community. So, Luckily, we got that done. It was done on a 7-0, a unanimous vote, dedicating, I think it was $500,000 to $1 million to just testing and just support for people. And, and making sure that if, somebody was found positive, they had a place to go isolate. So there was funds for people to go to like hotels, right, to separate from the person who wasn't well. So that was done. But a lot of what's happened, since then has been, vaccines have now started coming, right? I mean, just to everybody. But what's been difficult, and I gotta be honest, is that they just haven't come to Santa Ana in the numbers that I expected them to. And in the numbers, well, maybe not expected, but in the numbers that I believe is necessary, right? Because, I think back when we were speaking, the numbers were high in Santa Ana. Well, after the holidays, they got even higher, right? I mean, so it was like 1 in 4 people were testing positive. I mean, that's just a crazy number, right? And some of these zip codes, like in 92701, 92704, were totally spiking and exceeding all the averages in the county. And so at some point we had like close to 4 or 5 zip codes, 4 or 5 areas that were just really, really dangerous. And so, we started, a campaign at that point with the school district, Latino Health Access, to say, hey, we got to be really careful. So we rolled something out called Protege Santa Ana, Protect Santa Ana. And we just did this, full out campaign to just, get people to not let their guard down, right? And not believe, hey, this is not a thing. It's, we're fine. But it was right after, Christmas, New Year's, when a lot of people were just, you just want to be with family. And I get it. Our culture just lends itself to that. And it's difficult, but I saw some very ugly things at some of our local hospitals, which is, the morgues were so over capacity that they had to bring in trailers and bodies had to be stored in trailers. That is a terrible sight to see. And once I saw things like that happening here, it just, created a sense of urgency. Right. And luckily we're now past that a little bit, but I still feel like because we're a community that's been so devastated by this. I mean, we, have more than 45,000 positive cases. That's a huge number, man. I mean, I every time I think about that, I think like, that is a large part of our population, but over 700 deaths. And each death represents like a family member, like like a father, a grandparent, a parent, a sibling, or, a child. And so, I just felt like we never got the amount of vaccine here in the city that we should have, because we saw things being stood up at Disneyland and Anaheim Convention Center, and then a place, Soka University and in South County, I think it was Aliso Viejo. But I just felt like, logic dictates, hey, let's bring the resources to where the problem is, right? Because the problem wasn't countywide. Everybody knew the problem, or at least the heavy numbers, the high numbers, the high risk areas were in Santa Ana and a little bit of Anaheim, right? But the resources didn't come to us. And that's when, I know this past week, I kind of lost it a little bit at the council meeting, and there was an article about, the rant I went on, but at some point, I'm not trying to blame anybody, but I just want people to be responsible, and say, let's help those who need the help. And so it looked bad because the vaccine was going to areas like that didn't have high numbers in it. And it really did it really did fit the stereotype of ignoring Latinos, low-income people, essential workers. And I just thought, this is a horrible look for the county. It really was. And so, I mean, something had to be said. And we've been sending letters and, talking to anybody. I'm on the phone with the governor's staff often, and our state legislators, and, just telling them, in the end, after this is over, people are going to hold you accountable. And they're going to say, what did you do, man? Where were you? I mean, these families, these 700 families, I'm pissed for them. And, and I know that if I were one of them, I'd be saying, where were you? What did you do? How did you help my family?
Right. And you mentioned too, I believe in our last interview, how cities like Long Beach or Pasadena have their own healthcare agencies. I know you wanted to do something like that in Santa Ana. As far as there any progress in getting that started, or what's the steps that you need to be taken?
Yeah, man, you're right on time. Your timing is perfect because I'm going to be introducing something this at the next council meeting that is going to direct our staff to do what's called a feasibility study. So it's basically just to bring us back some information on what that would look like, right? So, um, yeah, if you look at Long Beach, especially Long Beach, they've almost vaccinated all their people, right? I mean, they got direct supply. They were able to, be really efficient and effective in how they delivered that vaccine. And they've been able to open up, partially schools. And it's a really good look because they were able to, sort of separate and do their own thing, sort of tailored to their community. And for Santa Ana, I mean, I think that we're large enough, like I told you before, and we have, more importantly than just being large enough, but we have such different challenges than like the other 34, or excuse me, 33 or 32 cities. I mean, the only one that would be kind of similar would be Anaheim to some degree, but relative to the other cities, we just have really, really different challenges. I mean, we have a high, large immigrant population, many of them with, chronic underlying conditions, a lot of people who are undocumented, a lot of people who are low income. So we should be able to tailor a public health system and response for them that's really different than the rest of the county, because trying to do something county-wide when you have a community that's so different like Santa Ana, I mean, I get their challenge, but I also think that, we've always been sort of ignored, right? And I think this way, what I'm hoping to do again at the next council meeting is, and hopefully my colleagues will support it. I know that they know that there's no secret that I've had about just looking at it, at least the first step, to look at it and see, how much it would cost, what it would take. But I think it's time. I think if there's anything that this pandemic showed us is that, we were on our own. We are on our own, and so if we're going to do that, we might as well get the funding for it, directly from the federal government, and let us allocate this. Let us, let us protect our people the way we know how.
And you mentioned it too earlier, how the vaccines didn't really reach the people that it needed to, or that were hit the hardest. That's something we saw on a national level too. And that's something I feared when the vaccines did start first rolling out, is that the more, I wouldn't even say the more privileged, but just the wealthier bunch, or people who feel like they're more privileged, we're trying to cut corners, cut lines. And we've seen that all across the nation. I think that's something that's a little bit disgraceful, obviously, or discouraging. It's discouraging to see that people don't have the perspective to put themselves in someone else's shoes, as someone that may need it more, someone who's an essential worker versus working from home, or someone who's in a crowded apartment complex versus someone who's in a 2-story mansion looking over the ocean. So it's just, it's very, like I said, discouraging to see that on a national level and a county level.
Oh man, well, I'll help you. It's unconscionable. Look, to me, it borders on criminal. I'm telling you, it is the wrong thing to do. When you're a public, elected official, you should be seeing, how can I help those that are in the most need? That should be your first reaction. Let me help those that are in the most dire need. And, even if that wasn't the case, if you look at Orange County, right now, we're really close to moving into what's called the red tier, which is the less restrictive tier. We're in purple tier right now, which is the most restrictive, right? But we could have been in the red tier, the lower tier, and started opening up more businesses, because we do need to do that, man. We need to open up businesses. People need to work, right? They want to go back to work, and they need to work, especially our people. We could have been there had the county said, hey, you know what? Let's go get those communities that are most hard hit. Let's get them better. Let's get their numbers lower. Because on average, and if you look at like the mean or the average of, cases, if you attack where the problem is the highest, you're going to bring the average way, way down, rather than starting in areas where it wasn't as high, right? So everybody complains about not being able to open. Well, had the strategy been different and the strategy begun in communities like ours, we could have brought the entire county average down. We would be in the red tier, if not lower, right? And so that, sort of mistake not only cost us, but it cost the entire county. And, and so the entire county has to wait now another 2, possibly 3 weeks to be able to get into the next tier, had the strategy been different. And like you said, you would think human nature is like, let's just go help those people that really do need the help because they're the ones who are suffering. That aside, all right, that aside, that moral decision aside, you should use logic to say, hey, if we want to improve as a county, let's hit the hard hit areas. We bring the average way down and we'll be opening up a lot sooner and we'll be in a healthier place. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Well, going back to the vaccines, I know a lot of people, at least in my age group and my demographic, they're a little skeptical of the vaccine. How do we improve the message about, hey, this vaccine is beneficial to you? And we get people, especially the older generations, the ones that who are in line first and essential workers like teachers and stuff like that, as they move down the block. How do we get those people to be more comfortable taking the vaccine?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of just offsetting a lot of the misinformation, because I hate to say it, even some of the Spanish language media will say, no te vacunes, te van a poner un chip en el brazo y te van a seguir. So it's a matter of just, talking to people and putting out accurate information. So I think that's the best thing we can do is put out, good evidence-based, factual-based information that basically tells you nothing is perfect. And that's, sort of the premise we have to start with is that there is no silver bullet here. But if you look at what the virus does to a system, versus what a vaccine can do to you that, has already been tested, has already gone through, rigorous, scrutiny. I think that, what I've seen is clearly this virus, you'll get over it, but the remnants and the after effects, long-term to a person's, immune system, and more importantly, your respiratory system. I mean, they're saying that if you look at lungs that aren't impacted by the virus and those that have had the virus, it looks like a person who's had it, may not have been a smoker, but it looks like they've been smoking their entire lives. Right. So we still don't know the long-term effects of these viruses. I'm worried about that. And the way, I see it is that, there is more damage that will be done by this virus to your system than this vaccination that has been, again, peer reviewed, tested, and looked at in a short time. So it really is, that vaccine hesitancy or reluctance is a real thing, especially in our community, because our community is can be easily misinformed because, there are media outlets that are trusted. You look at, Univision, Telemundo, radio stations, they have a lot of influence on our community. So to the extent that they're not pushing out good, accurate, evidence-based information, that could lead to confusion. And so I know that I'm in the process of putting together a video with the Consulado de Mexico in Spanish so we can get it out to people to offset and provide at least good data, right? And unfortunately, man, that had to be put back because the consul, the actual Consul de Mexico here in Santa Ana, just passed away. So that got put on hold. And yeah, he was a good man, Mario Cuevas. And but it wasn't, COVID related, but it was more, something that, we realized, just a few weeks ago, we're going to get tons of vaccines. So that's one thing everybody should know. We're going to get literally a glut and flooded with vaccine very, very soon. Mm-hmm. So it's now getting those vaccine into arms. And how do we do that without people, like you said, feeling nervous, feeling anxious, and feeling reluctant about getting it? It's, it's something that we all need to just, especially our parents, grandparents, people like you said, that are essential workers and dealing with the public. That's who we want to have, vaccinated. Young dudes like you, you're not immune from it, but the propensity is just lower, right? And and the fact that you'll bounce back quicker than some of us, is a real thing. But yeah, getting it into older folks' arms is going to be important.
And I think the transparency is key too, because we've seen it on a national level. at least like it was a Vice President Harris. She had like a whole picture and video of her getting the shot, as well as you're a big basketball fan, and I've seen commercials from, I'm watching an NBA game, and people like older players like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and a few other players will, talk about the vaccine and kind of encourage the viewers to, feel more comfortable about it. And I think that's a step in the right direction, because even before this pandemic rolled around, even before this vaccine, there was a lot of people who were skeptical of vaccinations. And I think this has only escalated. And then the distrust of our government has escalated more too in these times. So, I think people it's at an all-time high. I feel like vaccine hesitancy and skepticism, but it's good to see whether it's you at a local level or, Vice President Harris or just other people that are very familiar, someone very prominent like Kareem. Those people kind of help people feel more comfortable.
That's a good point. I think you're right. And I think because, communities like ours, especially, the African-American community too, I mean, they have just there's a horrible history, with the Black community being used, for other purposes. And so their reluctance is real. I mean, they've got history to reflect on to show that, not all these tests, were helpful and positive. And so you're right. I think it is, I think it has been really helpful. So that's a question I'm going to ask you. So somebody, and this is what my wife has told me. She goes, well, why don't you get it, yourself inoculated, do it on camera, do it on a video, and put it out there. That way people know, look, you're not just telling people to do it, but you're actually doing it yourself. So I've been of the, belief that, look, as soon as it's available to me, I'm there. Like, I'm not going to even, you don't even have to ask me twice. But I also, am, aware that I don't want to jump in front of anybody that, needs it more than I do. So right. That's where I think my challenge has been. And so my wife and I go back and forth. So she's like, man, go get it done. You could, you should get it done now, because you're out there with the public, you're out there, speaking to people, you're dealing with people. You don't want to, pass it along to anybody, or somebody pass it along to you, and then you can't do your work. So I think, there is a provision in some of the executive orders where essential workers include, elected officials or people who are going to be in positions of authority and decision-making, that they can get it. But I've always thought, man, if I could give up my vaccine for a senora who's, really in a tough place and she's vulnerable, 100%. Right. But I do think, like, to your point, there's value in seeing, like, somebody who, in the community is like, you see them getting vaccinated, you're like, all right, I'm good as well. So,
yeah. Now, going on to another issue that we talked about pretty in depth on our last October interview was affordable housing. What are some things you're doing now as a mayor to address the affordable housing issue in the city of Santa Ana?
So, good question. And, on Tuesday, so your timing's good, man. You've been hitting things that have just are either about to happen or just happened. So on Tuesday night, I directed an ad hoc committee, which is a small committee of the city council to address the issue of housing. So I appointed 3 council members to sit on this advisory committee to give us direction on what we should do. So they're going to be looking at the affordability question. They're going to be looking at rent control. They'll be looking at a document that's a kind of a governing document called the housing element, and they'll be talking about the general plan. So those are things, all of them related to the housing issue here in Santa Ana. So a lot's happened on housing. There was a couple of appeals that were filed by neighboring cities like Irvine, Newport Beach, Yorba Linda, and Garden Grove that were filed against us about maybe a month and a half ago. They had been filed previously, but they were decided about a month and a half ago, where they wanted to take credit for all the affordable housing that we're doing here in our city. And so, it's just not a good look for other cities to do that. I mean, they should have just come to us and said, hey, how can you help us? And we would have said, let's sit down and talk. But, to file things, I just didn't think was the right way to go. They ended up losing. Because we weren't saying we're going to stop doing affordable housing. If anything, we want to do it, but we want to do it in a way that makes sense to our people, right? I want to look at where's the need, and the need isn't for people who are making more than $80,000 a year. The need is for people who are making less than $40,000 and $30,000 a year. That's where the need is. So if, I'm hoping that this committee on housing will bring us back some recommendations that we can now take some steps forward. And I'm really confident because there's some, the council members who are going to be serving on there have all said that they're very interested, very concerned, and they campaigned on this. They campaigned literally on this issue, right? And so I know that I'm encouraged that we'll be able to bring something back that we can start looking at really soon. But it's the other thing that we're that kind of related, well, is definitely related to housing is rental assistance, right? I'm not sure when we spoke, we knew that people were nervous about like, how long am I going to be able to stay if I can't pay my rent? Right. Given that maybe they're not working or their hours have been cut or whatever consequence this pandemic has affected them. So we just received about close to $10 million on rental assistance. So we want to make sure, and I want to make sure that it's spent really intelligently to where we affect as many people as we can, help as many people as we can, and negotiate with the landlords, right? As opposed to like, somebody's 6 months behind on their rent, offer them 4 months, say, here, you know what, here's 4 months worth of back rent or arrears on your rent. Go ahead and forgive the other 2. And many of our landlords are doing that. And you know what, our landlords do also need help because some of them are, just family. I mean, they're just like, a mom and pop or whatever, or, people who are not affluent, they just own a piece of property and they're also in a position that they have to pay their mortgage. So to the extent we can help them, help the tenants at the same time, it is a win-win. So I'm encouraged. I just, I'm always worried, how do we get that information out to the people who need it the most? And the people who need it the most are the ones that hear about it the least, right?
Yeah,
or
right.
The last ones to hear about, like they hear about it when the money's gone, and that's my challenge is how do you reach out to them? How do you engage with them? How do you get them? Because usually, the great thing is that this isn't limited to legal residents or citizens. Immigration status isn't a question. So those that are undocumented are eligible for this as well. But, they, it's just, they're a hard to reach demographic and a hard to reach community. So that's the challenge right now that we're having, or that we're going to try to tackle really effectively. It's like, let's get these to the people that need it the most, right?
And going back to the conversation we had about it being criminal for those of more affluent neighborhoods, cutting lines to go to get the vaccine and stuff over the people who need it more. I think evicting people during these times too. I mean, whether it's at a local level or stuff that I've seen at a national level, that's almost downright criminal too. Like the fact that we can't, feel some sort of sympathy and empathy for, someone who, if they're going through hard times and this is such unprecedented times, the fact that people are still getting evicted is really sad to see.
Yeah. So it's literally criminal now because there are provisions in these executive orders that if somebody gets evicted, there really is, there's a moratorium on the evictions, which means you can't legally evict anybody. So it literally is criminal. The tenants will have legal rights that they're afforded, so they can take these landlords and there's few, man. I'm hoping, there's fewer and fewer in Santa Ana, that do this because they'll find themselves in a problem, right? I mean, because the tenants can sue and the tenants can sue on their rights under these protections that have been afforded to them both at the federal level, state level, and local level. So they have a lot of remedies that they can, protect themselves with. So landlords have to be careful and they have to understand, that, tenants now have been empowered with certain rights that they didn't have before because of this public health crisis, right? It's and eventually these protections will go away as the pandemic recedes and as we start lifting these protections. But for now, it really is dangerous if a landlord makes these decisions without good cause. And so, it literally will be violating the law if you do that. So you're right. You and I believe that, look, you shouldn't do it because it's just morally the wrong thing to do. But unfortunately, not everybody, has a good, strong moral compass. Right. And so that's why these like legal rights have to be there to protect these tenants.
Now, I know another topic we talked about last time we chatted was helping small businesses out. And we talked about it earlier too in the conversation, how small businesses either lost a lot of money or some had to go out of business because of the pandemic and they weren't able to open up. What are some things that City of Santa Ana is doing right now to, help those local small businesses that keep our community afloat?
Yeah, we're trying to make sure we have our own grants, which are, they're small. Look, they're right around $5,000. We've dispensed about $5 million in business grants, small business grants to some of our businesses that have been challenged, some that are really close to failing, because we have some businesses that haven't opened up since March of last year. Like, so they're going literally on a year of being closed. I'm trying to remember the date, the exact date. I remember March 15th as a date in my mind that I remember the governor's executive order last year just came down and shut everything down, right? So we're very close to that date. But yeah, some businesses haven't opened up for that year. And to me, what scarce dollars we have in funding for support for our businesses, I'm trying to find those businesses that are really struggling and the ones that, are barely making it, to make sure that they don't fail. And and what's been difficult, Noah, is that there's some businesses that have defied these orders, man. And that, I get it. I get calls almost daily about businesses that not just now that things are getting a little better, but when it was really bad, you still had businesses that were opening up indoors. People weren't wearing masks. Nobody was, distanced. I mean, everything you shouldn't do was it was like, the pandemic wasn't happening, right? And so to me, that was really difficult because, the question was, do we go in and shut them down? Do we go in there and cite them and give them fines? And to me, it was, again, going back to the morality of this. How could you do that to people?
Right.
How could you expose people to that? And, and yeah, we would all love to have our businesses continue to, do well and survive, but you can't do that to the public. I mean, you just can't do that to people and your own staffs, right? So, what we decided is to take a different approach, is that when we get money, we want to reward and give those funds and that support to businesses that have been following the rules and following the law and taking care of their employees and taking care of their patrons and protecting them. Give them the money first, and give them the money, because it'll probably be exhausting on them because we have so many more good actors than bad actors. But for those that, have been defying the law, haven't been following the rules, we can go in and shut them down, or we can go in and give them citations, but they'll just pay the citations and,
Right.
and continue operating. Where you really get them, and this is what we're doing, we put them on notice, like, hey, we get that you're doing this, but just consider this. When you go back to renew your license or your permit, we're going to remember this. This is going to be on our log. So a fine of $100, anybody can pay. It's a cost of doing business, right? But if you're going to compromise your permit or your license going forward, that's what I'm hoping will get people's attention. And that's what we've been doing, is sending out notices to everybody, just saying, be forewarned, when you come up for renewal, this is something that we're going to consider, in renewing your license or permit.
And I think that stems from the lack of continuity. I believe it was around the winter time when things were really spiking. Governor Newsom made the call to, go back on shutdown and close things up more tightly. But I believe it was like the Orange County Sheriff, the Riverside County Sheriff. Both of them were kind of like, well, we're not going to enforce it. And, the people hearing that, like the disconnect, now all of a sudden, like, they're just more relaxed attitudes. Businesses probably think the same thing. And that's where it comes to, the lack of, like I said, continuity between different levels of government and then the people following those rules, and not necessarily, like, going back to what I said earlier too, not trusting the government that they're doing, what's best for them, or, backed by science and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of it's tricky, but it stems from, I think, that.
Yeah, totally. No, I think that, that's a great point. I think you're almost cherry picking the information too, because, you're going to say, well, to your benefit, well, so-and-so said, it's okay to go ahead and, open, or, they're not enforcing it, so it must be okay. But, when you had the president saying things like, masks aren't important, and and let's open things up, and so you're getting that from the top, and you've had like a year of that nonsense. And then you have others, like you said, other local authorities who are telling you, well, we're not going to enforce this. This is not good. This isn't important. Yeah, it confuses people, but then it makes people say, again, you cherry pick the information when you have people giving you good reasons why you shouldn't. You say, well, so-and-so, says it's okay. And you'll use that to your advantage. And yeah, it does confuse people. There is no consistency, especially here in Orange County. I mean, like I said, here in Santa Ana, very different than some of the other communities in the rest of the county that, like it was like a party, and it's tough to see, I mean, it's tough for me to look at and think, a lot of those businesses outside of Santa Ana and the rest of the county, you have the employees who are from Santa Ana, right? Mm-hmm. So, they go out there, they get sick, they bring it home. Like you said, many of them live in overcrowded conditions in multi-generational households, and they get their entire house sick, right? Everybody there. And so that's what to me was tough, is that, it's not just a Santa Ana problem, but when you have people who work everywhere, right? I mean, all throughout the county and beyond, you bring whatever it is that you're exposed to home. So, look, in the end, I think the idea is to just get everybody inoculated quickly, and that way the numbers will start coming down. But it's been, it's been a struggle, just like you said, having a consistent theme, having a consistent message, and people get confused. And even our own people here in Santa Ana, I mean, they have their own opinions, man. We're very opinionated here. Mm-hmm. Some of them say, hey, this is the right thing to do, and some of them are like, leave me alone. Right. I know how to take care of myself. And so in that sense, I respect everybody's opinion. All we can do as, as public officials is just try to give good, clear, again, factual information. So.
Mm-hmm. Now, I wanted to take it back to a national level, because on January 6th, we saw something that we'd never seen in our history before. There was a group of protesters, not even protesters, but just people stormed the Capitol building over in Washington, D.C. Can you describe, I guess, what your emotions and your thoughts were on after seeing that news break?
Yeah, man. I the only way I could describe it is that they're domestic terrorists. I mean, in my opinion, they're people that, unfortunately, degraded our government to a point where I felt I was looking at a third world country. Because I mean, those of us who are from Latin American countries, I mean, I'm from Bolivia. You see stuff like that a lot: the corruption, the violence, the insurgency of people. And that's because, they get a lot of outside influences in these, smaller, poorer countries. I don't think it's something inherent to them. I just think they have influences that come in from the outside. But for the United States, I mean, it's always been seen as like, we respect our democracy. All of us abide by certain, rules and principles, right? That, we're going to respect, election results. So to see that, yeah, it was disturbing, because, you saw people that really did feel like, I saw a lot of white supremacists, right? I saw a lot of white supremacy, and I just thought, these are people who think that their government is being taken away from them. And I just, what was most alarming is that if it could happen there, it could really happen anywhere, right? Mm-hmm. And you start seeing that should be the most sacred place. And, after that, nothing is safe, because you could go into state capitals, you can go into local, city halls, and all this stuff can happen anywhere, because you have people that are that, again, being misled to think that, their point of view is something that, is getting away from them. I just saw a lot of fearful people, scared, willing to go ahead and harm others because they think that their way of life is being taken away from them. And I realized the sad part about it is that many in this country believe that we shouldn't have, sort of a diverse government, broad democracy, people of color in positions of power. These are people that are really pushing back against that. And when you think about how many people supported Trump and his, lies, it just brings it back to like seeing how divided we are as a country. For those of us who think we're making good progress and things are looking better, when you see how many people are like, no, that's not the America I want to see. We've got a tough road. So, I mean, that's what made me realize is that, yeah, we've got a tougher road than we expected.
Yeah, because you mentioned the lies that he was spreading and the fact that it was, voter fraud and, that they didn't want to win the election properly. And I think news media outlets too have to be held more accountable too, as far as what they say, because they continuously put that information out, and any other Trump supporter already that was existing now hears this from the news that they watch, and they feel some type of way about it. And all of a sudden they're aggressive, or they just feel, gun ho about it and whatever. And it's total, I would say it's manipulation, not only on Trump's behalf, but as well as like other media outlets and what they're playing on their news cycles and what they're feeding these people. Because a lot of times I just think they're misinformed, and that's why they feel that type of way, but they don't see the other side of the coin, and they're only getting fed a certain type from their news.
Yeah. I think, it's funny because, yeah, when you look at the press and you look at the media, at some point, when your media is profit driven, and your ability to exist depends upon ratings, how objective can you be, right? I mean, and so I think that whether it's the media on the left, whether it's the media on the right, I mean, unfortunately, they're in a position where they have to pay the bills, right? And so they pander to a certain audience, and the real losers are the rest of us, right? Who want information that's objective, that's unbiased. And where do we get that? What source is pure, right? I mean, who's going to bring us that, fact-based information when there's no motive? If everybody is trying to like get the higher ratings, so you have, Fox, you have MSNBC, you have the others, and so it's a challenge, man. I mean, I think that's where I think the public are the losers, because we, again, where do we go for that information? Because there are things that I concede is that even on the left, some things are just not accurate, right? And they're not clear. Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of it is is pandering. And for many of us, we just want to have information so we can make an informed decision, right? Mm-hmm. And that's where I think we lose. And you have folks that are just trying to get ratings. And for the right, I mean, Trump was he was a blessing to them, man, because they got higher ratings than any time in their past, because he was such a lightning rod for people to listen to, and it was a scary moment that a person like that could change things so drastically, like one person. Right?
Mm-hmm. Now, I know there's a few cities, to go back to a local level, in Orange County that are opening up school districts. Is there a plan for Santa Ana to reopen, and what are some of the precautions that we're going to see now after bringing kids back into school?
Yeah. So, man, another great question. So I have my, opinions of it. I see a lot of kids, and I listen to a lot of parents, more importantly, that think, that tell me their kids are sad. Their kids are depressed. Mm-hmm. Their kids are really fatigued and anxious to, just go back, right? Go back to school, go back to a different, to their way of life. And, they've lost so much time learning, and look, teachers have been great. They've been doing their best, but even your best under these conditions is never going to be equivalent to actually what the environment of learning is in person, right? Mm-hmm. So even on your best day of virtual learning is probably not going to equate to the worst day of in-person learning. So I get the challenge, and I understand, where the teachers are. So I've tried to stay in my lane and not get too much involved in the, what the school district does on its decision. But I think that, I have a lot of faith in them. I have a lot of trust that they see that same anxiety on the faces of parents, and on the faces of the kids, right? So yesterday I was at Santa Ana High with the Saints, the varsity Saints football team. I know one of the assistant coaches, so we went out there and I just wanted to meet them. I just wanted to talk to them, and they invited me out there to go say a few words, and just to see the looks on their faces, man, was incredible. They were just happy to be outside. Mm-hmm. So they're going to have a limited season. It'll be maybe 6 games, I think. Probably nobody's in shape,
Yeah.
but because they've been conditioning lightly, and it's nothing like conditioning with full pads and helmets and everything else. But look, they just looked thrilled to be out there. I mean, it was pretty amazing to see. And so I hope that we can get there. And I think the governor is doing a good job in incentivizing and motivating. And I hope that our communities take advantage of that funding safely, because look, nobody wants staff or faculty or anybody on a campus to get themselves exposed or sick. So making sure that the option of vaccinations is available 100%, and I think that's what's being done. I think it looks good that hopefully everybody is safe and everybody is inoculated first, and then the transition is done smoothly. Because I know that, again, going back to like Long Beach as an example, they were able to vaccinate a lot of their teachers and faculty, and they brought back the elementary school kids first. Just start small, and then they gradually are, going to be going up, grade levels. But I think that we can get there. And I've spoken to a couple of school board members, and like I said, I have a lot of trust in them, and I've tried to stay in my lane. Right, I haven't tried to tell them, hey, you got to do this, you got to do that. But I do share with them that I hear a lot of anxiety from parents, a lot of sadness from kids, and I live it. I mean, I've got my senior and my freshman as well, and so I see it at home. But I know that in other households, it's probably even more. It's more difficult. So it's funny because I mean, there's a city. Well, in San Francisco, the mayor sued their school district.
Wow.
Because they haven't been opening, and they haven't opened up. So she got aggressive, and look, she's a good mayor. She's very sharp, but it got to that point, and I don't think it'll ever get to that point here in Santa Ana, because we have a good relationship between both our agencies. But I mean, I know that the urgency of wanting to get this issue addressed and getting kids back into school, protecting the teachers, protecting the faculty and staff is so important. But I do think we can reconcile it. So I've heard as early as spring, right around spring break, either before or after. Mm-hmm. But because sports are opening up, and I know for my boy, he wants to go back to playing basketball. They're looking at doing limited indoor sports as well. So I think all the trending lines are looking good for there to be maybe some recovery of something this semester.
Right. Because I think at the end of the day, we both grew up in Santa Ana. We both come from immigrant backgrounds, and we understand like the struggles. And at least for me, like sports was something I could look forward to outside the house. And look, like when the pandemic first hit and I wasn't working, I was forced to spend more time at home with my family, and I didn't have the best relationship with my family. But I'm also 26. I was able to save up some money, and I moved out to where I'm renting a small room on my own. Kids that are 13 or even younger, kids don't have that option. Kids don't have the ability to go. If I wanted to escape, I could simply drive to a hiking spot and go hike for a few hours during this pandemic. They don't have that luxury. And so I think a lot of times, like the sports is definitely like their one thing, their one outlet that they can turn to. And I get to coach too at a high school in Garden Grove, but it's on the Santa Ana border, Santiago High School. And it's encouraging to see them, how happy they get just to be ready and getting prepared for season. And as wacky as things are, and like you said, it's a shortened season, they're just so excited to have something to look forward to other than logging onto Zoom, never leaving the room. They can't see their friends. And of course, social media, I think, plays a big part in it too, because our generations didn't really grow up with social media as much, but they're getting fed so much stuff through Instagram. And if they're following a bunch of different pages of people still going out or whatever, or adults, I don't know, they just have the fear of missing out on different things because they're younger, because of their situations, and they don't have anything to look forward to on a day-to-day basis. Yeah,
I think that all those things are, they're just layered on top of everything for them. And so, I think, look, sports are definitely like, critical, right? Mm-hmm. But I just think human interaction for that, at that age, when you're in your teens or younger, and even little kids, I mean, look, all kids, I mean, they just miss being with other kids, right? Their age, whether it's elementary, intermediate, or high school. And I just think it is very difficult. I think, we're maybe going to call this the lost year, right? I mean, because I can't imagine, not being able to, graduate with your peers, be on campus with your friends. Because even if you're not an athlete, I think just that human touch, because like you said, the conditions that we live in Santa Ana, we're very, closed in. And to be able to see a friend and to be able to see a teacher or a counselor who's going to talk to you and tell you things that are important, how to apply, how to fill out your college application in a way that's more personal than like on a Zoom call, right? I think those things, those elements, you miss. And so, I'm just very grateful. Look, I mean, we'd be having a different conversation, Noah, if there weren't vaccines. This would be a really tough conversation because we'd be thinking about, well, who knows when, right? Like we don't know how long this is going to last. But I do think that the advent of these vaccinations are going to make us get there a little bit faster. And I have trust in the superintendent and school board that they are looking at how we can a path to get kids back early. I'm hoping look, if I was going to propose to them, I want to see the kids graduate, and hopefully we can have them graduate like in person if it's done well, because Santa Ana Stadium's big. The capacity is about 9,000, and I know that they were looking at, it's huge. We were looking at doing a drive-through graduation, and that's a possibility. I just want to offer up the idea of, hey, let's see how we can use a stadium where you spread people out really, far, and maybe make smaller groups of graduating classes, and maybe limit it to 2 parents, or because to me the graduation ceremony is more important, or as important to the parents as it is to the student, because it's for many families, it's your first person in your family to graduate high school, and it is such a symbolic, important moment. It's a milestone, right? So I don't know, whatever we can do to help out, we're just going to offer it up.
Right, because even to bring it back to like my perspective, when I graduated from Sacramento, it's about a 7-hour drive. And, a lot of my family wanted to go out there because I was, one of the first members of my family to graduate from college. And it's, like you said, it's a big thing, especially coming from that immigrant background, which a lot of Santa Ana families have. High school sometimes is just as big for them, though, because a lot of their parents or grandparents didn't get to have that high school education. They had to work from a young age. And so it's just monumental. And like you said, just putting on the cap and gown and, throwing it in the air, that's an experience that so many people around the world can say that they've shared. But, last year didn't obviously get that. Last year's class didn't get to do it. And hopefully this year's class, like you said, I'm glad hopefully we can find some way that we can make that happen.
Yeah, man, there's just more hope. I think this year there's just more hope than last year. Last year, I think we were all just really scratching our heads, like going, man, we don't know what's going to happen. And so I think now we have a little better sense of where we can go, and maybe timelines. And like I said, I just think we're going to get flooded with vaccine, and we're going to be able to start getting them in people's arms. And I think people will start getting better, and conditions will start improving. And so if we can, I mean, graduation is maybe May or June, depending on the campus. That's a ways off. And hopefully if we do a better job from this point forward, there's some things that can be done to salvage seasons, to salvage, some in-class stuff, and hopefully salvage, a very, very reduced, graduation ceremony. But yeah, I mean, there's just hope. I just feel hope that, we're even having these conversations, right? And that's a good thing, man. That's a good problem to have, that, how we can get there.
And going back to your role as a mayor, what are some other goals that you have laid out for 2021 and things that you'd like to accomplish?
Yeah, so a lot of stuff is on the way, and in the pipeline. A lot of it has to do with, policy changes with respect to housing. We did a nice thing that, didn't get a lot of attention, but I think was important. We changed a policy at the city council level, where now anybody who's a resident of Santa Ana can serve on a city commission or board, where before you had to be a voter, and that means you had to have, legal citizenship, and be a citizen to be able to serve on a city board or commission. And so we removed that language and made it eligible for anybody who resides in the city. So that means a person who is undocumented can serve on a city board or commission. And to me, those changes are important, not just symbolically, but really, effectively. I think maybe 4 or 5 of us on the council have appointed, people to serve as city commissioners and board members who are undocumented. And that means that, these are people who are raised here, who know the city well, who love the city, who are extremely intelligent and qualified, can now serve. And whereas before they couldn't. So those are steps that I think at least make everybody feel like they're part of the community, and no longer like, hey, you're separated or you're somehow different or inferior or whatever. But that's one change I think that continue to promote support for the immigrant and undocumented community. But I think another one is just looking at what we can do when it comes to the youth, right? And what does the youth want to see as changes? And and a lot of what the youth that I heard, they said, hey, we want reform in law enforcement. We want more investment in programming for youth, and we want more space for us to be able to just go throw a ball, go throw a frisbee, go have some park space available. So I'm hopeful that another committee that we set up to work with the school district will attack that problem of what's called joint use, and maybe work with the school district to see how we can jointly use that space. In other words, the sort of the schoolyard, and open it up as maybe a park. And maybe the city can help fund that, secure it, maintain it. But I remember as a kid, going back a long time, but as a kid, my park was my school. Like I didn't have a park anywhere near me. So our neighborhood school, the school that we all attended, that's where we'd play football. That's where we'd play basketball. And that was just, for lack of a better word, that was our open space, right? And so to the extent we can get back there, we could, there's a lot of beautiful campuses in the city. And so hopefully if we can find a way to maybe find a few that will make sense and open those up, especially in those neighborhoods that don't have a park anywhere near there, right? And if we could do it safely, if the city will help maintain it and secure it, and the school district works with us, I just think that would be a great thing, because I don't like to see locks on gates on schools, man. It's not in Santa Ana, not because we're such a park poor community.
Yeah, it's a different kind of environment. I think I've always appreciated parks, but I've learned to appreciate parks more during this time, because it'd be a good place to go read or play a board game with my friend on a nice sunny day, that kind of thing. And going from city to city, you see the differences in parks and how they treat their parks, from a Tustin and Irvine, or even a city like Buena Park and Cypress, compared to the Santa Anas, the Anaheims, the Garden Groves, and just the difference in resources and they put in their parks. Especially someone like me, I like to play basketball, and a lot of the Santa Ana parks will still have the cracks, and it's almost dangerous to play basketball at a park there. And the bathrooms are usually not properly kept up. So it's something that I like to see too. Yeah, just the parks overall being a nice, like you said, space for the community to go and feel safe, but also have a good time and hang out.
Yeah, and I think more than anything, we're a built out city. We've got a lot of concrete around us, and not a lot of green space.
Yeah.
So look, I think that we will be able to get there, because there are communities like Manhattan, Chicago, San Francisco, where there's small areas that are very densely populated, and a lot of concrete, a lot of harshness, and that's where Santa Ana, I think we are so large, and we just don't have enough park space for all our people. I think that with schools, like I said, I'm confident that there's a lot of good space there that we can use jointly, like we do at Godinez. So Godinez is a joint use school. It's right by Centennial. It's an open space area. Kids can use the campus to play, and it's more of a passive thing rather than programming it sometimes with league play. Like you said, maybe just it's just nice to be able to go onto a green patch of grass and throw a frisbee, man, or put out a blanket, listen to some music, just walk your dog or whatever you want to do. but those are the things I think that we need more of, is just, creating these areas, these spaces that, are great. I mean, I know I like you said, I've been walking a lot more and doing trails. So I was doing the trail on Maple, the bike trail in Santa Ana. It's just great to see how many people are out there. I mean, it's just, I think people, like you said, you appreciate it more, you value it more. We always knew it was there.
Yeah.
But now it's just like, oh man, this is super priceless,
Mm-hmm. So going back to, again, your role as mayor, what are some of the challenges that maybe you didn't see coming that you have faced already in your term?
Yeah, one of the things I didn't see coming is, how kind of isolated you are, where, we don't have the support of, many of the folks on the county. We don't have much support at the state or federal level, although, our state legislators are good. They're working with us on different things. Our federal representative is, working with us on some issues having to deal with, Wi-Fi access. But I think it really does make it, sort of isolating when you realize, you're a very large city, but very unique from others. And so I think, those are the challenges that I think we see. And what I also see is that, we have communities that are very opinionated, man. So, sometimes, you want to do the right thing, and, it offends another group. And that's where I think we all have to realize, look, nobody here is trying to, do the wrong thing. I think we have different ways of attacking a problem, right? And that's where I think we all have to respect ourselves. But, back to your point, I think because we've seen that disrespect at the highest level, like we've seen a dude just disrespect people. And, for somebody who is, sort of a national representative, behave that way, I think others feel like, all right, it's okay. It's okay to disrespect somebody. So, so I try not to do that. Look, we're all human. It gets away from us, but it's attacking a person's policy position and saying, yeah, I don't agree with it, and this is why. But I think that level of, lack of civility, I think that we've experienced over the past 4 years, and, before the 2016 election, I think kind of stayed with us a little bit. And that's where it's difficult, where you see the acrimony a little bit more. And I think, some things that weren't okay before are okay now. I mean, to say things that are just super hostile, right? I get a bunch of hate mail because of what we did with the undocumented. My position has always been very vocal. We're a sanctuary city. I'm very proud of that. For some people, it's not okay, and it's not that they disagree, but they take a personal, anger towards it. And so I get some very ugly emails, right? Wow. And I figure, look, you can disagree with me. I get it. I understand your position. I disagree with it, but I understand it. But I'm not going to go threaten you. And those are the things that are leveled against, I think, against people who tend to be strong voices in that area.
Mm-hmm. Well, as we wrap things up, I do have a different series of questions for you, because I already asked you the questions that I typically ask the guests. So I have to switch it up a little bit. If you could be reincarnated to any animal, what would it be?
Oh, man. So man, I'm going to have to go back to my roots, man. I would be a llama.
Okay.
Llamas are cool if you haven't seen many of them, but they hang out in the mountains, high altitudes. They're very common in Bolivia and the Andes Mountains. Mm-hmm. And they're pretty chill animals. They're beasts. They call them beasts of burden, like camels and horses and everything. I think they're related sort of to camels, but they carry product, and so but they're super strong, but they're very regal, long neck, really cool looking face. But yeah, man, be careful though. They can get angry, and what they say is that they spit. So I've never seen this, but and there's a saying, for us, is that cuando te escupen te queda la mancha. So always duck.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. Okay. All right. If you could have what would your last meal on Earth be?
Oh man, my last meal on Earth would be something called a salteña. Salteña is a pot pie. And go check it out. They have some right here in Santa Ana at La Rancherita Market, but it's a pot pie. It's indigenous, again, to the Andes Mountains. But it's good stuff, man. It's like the empanada, but it's not fried, so it's healthier. It's baked.
Okay.
And it's good stuff, man. So go check it out. Not a norteña, a salteña.
Okay. What did you say the market was again? And where
La,
streets are?
La Rancherita Market. It's right on Westminster, just west of Fairview.
Okay, perfect. That's right by where it works. I'll have to check it out.
All right, man. Go stop in, man.
Okay.
They only have them on weekends, though, by the way. So.
Okay. Well, today's a Saturday. I got nothing to do. And now, if you could go back and visit any time period in history, what would you want to go see?
You know, if I just got through reading the book, the biography on Hamilton. So, you know, to be back in those times, I probably wouldn't be real welcome as a person of color.
Right.
But just to see, you know, sort of those conversations and that, you know, a country being born. I realize a lot of what we're going through right now has to do with, we're a country that's founded by slave owners who wanted to be free.
Yeah.
So that is a tough beginning, man. You know, so where we are now, a lot of what we face now with, social injustice and, and inequality and inequity, goes back to those times where, we just had a troubled beginning by folks who said, we want religious freedom. We want to be free and independent, but you're slave owners, right? Mm-hmm. And you're, and so there's an inherent tension and conflict between that. And so it would be fascinating to see, hopefully from afar, because we probably wouldn't be too welcome.
Right. Now, if you could, hold on, let me reword this. If you could work on any area of yourself in the next year or coming months, what would that be?
I think in just, being a little bit more present for my, as a father, being more present for my kids who are getting older. Like, now my second one is ready to go off to college, and my third is, in high school and well on her way. So it's just making more time. And, man, for all of us during this pandemic, what we realized, time is precious. And we've been able to the one maybe good silver lining between this is that I've been able to see my kids more during this pandemic because they're home. And it's been crushing to them not to be out, but it's been precious time that I probably wouldn't have had, right? With them. They probably would have been out doing things. And so they've had to be home, and just to connect with them, and just to connect with my mother, who's 85, who's now been vaccinated, now got her second vaccination. And just to see her go get through this, because many of my friends' parents and, people that I've known all my life, these parents have passed away, as a result of this. So I think it's just making better use of my time. That's the one thing I would improve, is that, I tend to be, I tend not to be fair. And that's something that's not good.
Yeah. And it's tough too. In the society is so go. We're caught up in so many different things. It's hard to just make some time to, whether it's be present with your family or friends, close loved ones, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well said. Well, this was a lot of fun. Again, before you go, be sure to, promote anything you'd like to promote and go from there.
No, look, man, I appreciate it, Noah, and I know it's been a while, and, you did this pre-election, and now we're doing a post-election. Hopefully we do it post-pandemic as well. So make sure you check in with me after this starts getting a lot better. And I think maybe we'll set something up for the summer, because that's when I think things will be looking better. But look, I just want to make sure that people access the vaccine, go to the city's website, because we, especially for people who are monolingual Spanish speakers, or people who may not even be connected to the internet, and those who can't navigate the app, we have a phone number that the city offers, and you could just call it up. So we have people that are literally answering phones in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. So that's all they're doing, is just helping you get there, because we realize not everybody knows how to navigate this stuff. I mean, to us, it's simple. But to other, elderly people and, people who are not familiar with these apps and how to register, it's a challenge, man. We can't do that. We can't let that be an obstacle. So that's that's the only thing I'd really, promote at this point. So I just want to say I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you doing this, and us reconnect. You're good. You're good to your word.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And I appreciate you too for the things you're doing for the city of Santa Ana, a city I love. And yeah, thank you.
Good, man. All right. Have a blessed weekend, man.
All right, you too. Take care.